Welcome to Intro to Generative Artificial Intelligence, GenAI demonstrations and conversations. My name is Greg Bem, and I'm one of the faculty librarians here at SCC. I started in the fall, and I've been running GenAI workshops here since I started. And before I came to SCC, I was actually over on the west side, outside of Seattle in Kirkland, Washington, at Lake Washington Institute of Technology. That's where I was working when all of this started emerging in the public sphere. And so I actually started my workshops in GenAI and similar topics at Lake Washington. So this is kind of an ongoing passion for me. And I'm grateful for all of you to be here, for being here today, and for those watching the recording. So let's go forward here. So what is this workshop? This workshop is an intro to the basics of generative artificial intelligence, or GenAI technology. It is also a look at GenAI ethically, productively, and critically. And that's a phrase coined from our e-learning team here at the college. And welcome, is it Rachel? Okay, welcome. And this workshop is also a workshop for the college community from the library. So the library, specifically myself, developed this. What is this not? This workshop is not a deep dive into the underlying, did I hit record? Oh yeah, I did, okay. This is not a deep dive into the underlying technology. There's lots of information out there if you want to go down the rabbit hole of LLMs. And I know you're in computer science, so that might be something you pursue, but you're not going to get a lot of the deep stuff today in this short period of time. This isn't a super advanced look at specific tools, though we are going to be demonstrating the common and basic functionality of some of the tools today. And this is not the only perspective on GenAI. So I'm coming at it from an educator's background and a community college background. If you want to look at it from a variety of other backgrounds, there's lots of content out there on YouTube, on Instagram, on the web, in research. I highly recommend finding something that fits your context if you want more than what I'm providing you today. Okay. So today's agenda, we only have now about 46 minutes, so we're going to be going pretty quick here today, but we're going to be covering GenAI basics. I'm going to show common tools. We'll talk about what prompts and iterations are and what that means. And we're going to talk about the contexts where this technology is being used in higher education, as well as in the professional world. Things are constantly changing, but I'll give you some brief glances on that. We'll talk about some of the issues of the technology very briefly, as well as some of the benefits of the technology very briefly. And we'll close with some best practices or recommendations for how to use these tools as a student here. Does that sound good to folks? Sound reasonable? Great, I see you all online. Feel free to use the chat if you want at any point. And I welcome Lisa to the presentation. All right, let's start with the basics. What is artificial intelligence? In this definition, the artificial intelligence is concerned with building computers and machines that can reason, learn, and act in such a way that would normally require human intelligence, or that involves data whose scale exceeds what humans can analyze. AI is a broad field that encompasses many different disciplines, including computer science, data analytics and statistics, hardware and software engineering, linguistics, neuroscience, and even philosophy and psychology. So it's this very broad, multidisciplinary thing. It could be considered a field. It could be considered a subject area. It could be considered a lot of different things. But in this definition, the important thing to note is that it can really reach out to a variety of different interests and topics. This is from Google's, not Google search results, but Google's official definition. When we move into generative artificial intelligence, or GenAI, which is what we're talking about today, GenAI refers to deep learning models that can generate high quality text, image, images and other content based on the data they were trained on. So the deep learning models are the AI-ish aspect of this, and the functionality of GenAI is to generate something, generate this content. And we'll look at what that actually means in a minute.
To generate content that we describe to it, or
yes,
or what it's trained to?
Both.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I got this image from a colleague recently, and I love showing it. So GenAI is kind of like the smallest version of all of the types of AI. And if you can zoom in on this if you want, because the text is a little bit small, but in the smallest bubble in this image, we've got GenAI, which generates content, really superficial functionality. Traditional AI, which also exists in the world, does much greater levels of systematic functionality. You've got platforms that can do facial detection. TSA is using those types of things, and other government agencies. Image recognition. Think about security cameras and how they can recognize certain types of objects within them, and they're trained on the types of images that they're looking for. Speech recognition, that's not only being able to generate the text when you're using like an app in your phone, but it's also providing context and looking for grammar and looking for different types of patterns in language. And a variety of other types of functionality can be considered traditional AI. Artificial general intelligence, or AGI, that's when we start getting to the more human-like elements of AI. So if you've ever seen movies like WALL-E or 2001, where you've got a seemingly human-like character who sounds like they could be human or sounds very much like humans, and they're able to do things like provide assistance or respond to problems and to do tasks somewhat autonomously. That's what we're talking about with AGI. And then artificial superintelligence, that's when we get into the really the sci-fi-ish realms. AGI is a little sci-fi as well, but ASI is when we have these beings or these systems that are just so much more powerful than individual humans and can do things beyond what humans can do. So if you've ever seen the movie Her, at the end of the movie Her, we've got an AI who ends up joining all these other AIs, and they leave humanity because they consider themselves beyond humans. Humans are boring to them. Or in Ex Machina, another popular movie, at the end, the AI character, she basically kills the human and leaves and disappears into anonymity. So these types of technologies show up a lot in popular culture, but if we trace ourselves back to Gen AI, which we're focusing on now, that's kind of what's popular right now and what's also the most graspable, the most usable by individuals such as ourselves. So qualities of Gen AI, the Gen AI specifically. First of all, they use large language models. So if you want to research this more, you can Google LLM, large language models. An example of this is the Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3 or 4 now. Has anyone heard of GPT or Chat GPT? Yeah? Okay, yeah. So GPT is the LLM, and there are a lot of other ones out there, and there are many in development as well. The LLM is a system that is trained on large sets of data. So they're not generating these things with magic. They use data sets. They use collections of information to generate an image, to generate text, and they learn from that information by processing it and analyzing it and looking at patterns in language. It's very fascinating. If you're into linguistics, I highly recommend looking at how these language models actually work. On a more straightforward note, user input results in output. So the way these tools work is you're going to enter some text or enter an image into a box, and then the tool will give you the results. We'll look at that in a minute, but it's kind of like using a search engine or a library database, in that what you give it is what it looks for and responds to. These tools are developed by for-profit companies, organizations, and individuals. There's a large ecosystem of people that are involved in the development of these tools, and it's only growing and getting hotter every day. The platforms and the tools themselves could be free, paid, or both. Sometimes there's options. So keeping that in mind as you think about maybe using these as a student or as an employee at a future job, think about that these might have costs associated with them. They're also available in a variety of places. So most you can access through a web browser, but some have their own mobile apps, and some even have offline options as well. GPT-4, the number 4 all, is an example of an app that's open source, and you can download it on your computer and run multiple language models without having access to the internet.
That's crazy. That's cool.
And there are many gigabytes in size.
That's very impressive.
Standalone tools are embedded in other software. So we're seeing things like ChatGPT as a standalone tool, for an example, but now a lot of software that we're using in our everyday life, like Windows or the Adobe suite, they have this technology integrated into the software. So it is showing up in a lot of different places. Here are a few popular tools. There's a lot of them, but I just decided to throw 4 up on here. For those of you who have never used GenAI, you can look into each of these. There's ChatGPT, that's probably the most famous. Copilot, which uses GPT, is Microsoft's version of it. Gemini, which was formerly Bard, that's the Google product, and Claude. These are all, or the ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude are all considered frontier LLMs, which means these are the companies that are really developing the technology on a greater scale than any other company. So you may encounter the term frontier LLMs if you do more research, and that's what those 3 are. Have any of you used any of these? Yeah, Joel, which ones have you used?
Predominantly ChatGPT, and I use it for a lot of different things. I also use like Codecademy to learn extra coding skills, and I'll go to ChatGPT to cross-reference different things in code.
It's a good use case. Anybody else?
I use ChatGPT.
Okay. In the room, we've got the same ChatGPT. Okay. So common outputs. So these tools can do a lot of things. Some of you that have used these tools know this already, but the basics include plain text. So you can ask it something and it will turn an answer in plain text, or formatted text. And this can be really helpful with specific professional tasks you may have. So ChatGPT, for example, can create tables, can create computer code, graphs, bulleted lists, lots of different things. Still images, animated images, video, music. Are there any folks in like music or audio here? Anyone make music? No?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they can create music. They can also master music. So if you wanted to make an album, there's now technology that can actually set all of the levels and do all of the EQ to make it perfect.
It's all digitally done.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that we're seeing now. So when we are learning about GenAI, we need to know about prompts and iterations. So as I mentioned, GenAI interfaces use text boxes that are similar to search engines. And when you enter something into the search box, that's called the prompt. So you're prompting, you're suggesting or feeding some information into the text box, and then the tool is going to give you something back. Prompts are iterative or conversational. So what that means is, in not all, but most GenAI tools, especially ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini, you're actually having, or you're able to have a conversation with the tool. So you can send it some text and then it will respond, and you can send it more text and it will respond, and all of that is in the same contextual conversation. So you can ask it to revise its answers or tweak its answers or modify or add. It's very powerful in that sense. So that if you use it and you don't get what you want, you can tell it that you need it needs to make some changes, which is pretty
I
cool.
heard that you can like, give an example of your writing too, and it'll mimic your writing too.
Yes,
I was like, well, that's just dangerous.
you can feed it all sorts of stuff to inspire what its answer will be.
Yeah, that's so crazy. I haven't messed around with that one, but I hear your stories.
Yeah, for sure. We'll take a look at some of that. Some describe prompt engineering as an emerging skill set. So if you are looking for a job in tech, in the broad field of tech after this, or even in office management or an office environment, you may be asked to know or learn GenAI. And prompt engineering is essentially optimized ways of using GenAI, how to best use the tool in front of you to get the best response. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend looking into that. Here are some examples of prompts. And some of you might have some experience with these tools, but some of you might not have ever used them. So you might find these a little funny. But you can ask one of these GenAI tools, why do so many people like poetry? And you'll get an answer. Describe quantum mechanics to a 10-year-old. How do I make gluten-free pizza? Can we talk about life, the universe, and everything? What can I do to get over test anxiety? Where should I look for information about the latest research in nursing? Please provide some feedback on my current resume. Put all of the dates from this month into a spreadsheet and include empty fields for tasks and group member. So these are just some examples of prompts that you could use the tools for. And I want to highlight that this is broad for a reason. These tools are not necessarily created to be specific to a certain subject or task. They were designed initially and trained on data initially that spans all sorts of different subjects and topics. And as a result, many of these tools can provide answers and support for these questions and a gazillion others. So we're going to look at a couple examples today. Some of you said you've used ChatGPT. Has anyone used Copilot? Great. That means that you're going to experience it. So what we're going to do, this is the demonstration part of the presentation, is we'll start with ChatGPT. And how does that look for folks online? Is the resolution okay? Can you see it okay? Great. So we're going to start with ChatGPT, and then we'll go into Copilot, and I'll just show you some examples of the different types of things it can do, and then we'll go back into the presentation. So before I begin with some demo prompts, I want to just highlight the interface. And I want to also mention that this is the paid version. So if you sign up for ChatGPT, you will have a almost identical interface. The two main things that would be different are that these icons in the upper left will not be here, and you will be on GPT 3.5, which is the version of the LLM that is the older version. It's not as powerful, but it still is very good, especially for most of the things that most of us would need a tool like this to accomplish. So I'll highlight the interface quickly here. So on the top, you have the LLM, the model that you're using. So we're going to be using the latest model just for our demo today. And then on the left, I'm not going to go into these icons here, but on the left, you have your chat history. So if you are using ChatGPT, one of the nice things about the platform is that it can save your chats. And you can delete any chats as well if you don't want them anymore, which is fine. And you can also rename them for better organization. And you can also share them. So if you were working on something and you wanted to share it with maybe one of the other students in your class, or maybe even your professor, or you wanted to save it and have a link to it in a document or something, you could use the share feature. Pretty helpful. In the middle of the screen is where we're doing all of our prompts. So this is where the conversation is going to happen. It says, how can I help you today? And it has some suggestions, just as kind of fun prompts that we could explore if we were bored, or we can enter our message to ChatGPT below. And responding to earlier, your point about adding your own text or your own content to have ChatGPT use it, you can also attach a file, including a text file or an image, to the chat using the paperclip icon. We're not going to do that today, but you could do that if you wanted to. So what was one of those prompts I mentioned in the slide? Does anyone remember one of them that stuck out? Okay, well, we're going to use that one. And just responding to Lisa, your question in the chat, you can use any browser, yes. Okay, so we are going to enter describe quantum mechanics to a 10-year-old. So that is my prompt. That is the first iteration of my question or my request. And all I have to do is hit enter. And now we're going to watch what it does. I want you to note that it's fairly quick. And if you've never seen this before, it might seem magical or fantastic. Yes, because the fact that it's able to generate information this quickly is pretty impressive. And it's providing an answer. So I'm not going to read all of this, but imagine you have a toy box filled with different toys. In the regular world, if you choose a toy from the box, you can see and know exactly what you pick. But in the quantum world, the world of very, very tiny particles like atoms and electrons, things work a bit differently. So it is doing what we suggested. And how is it able to do this? Because again, it's trained on millions and millions of sources. And it knows, quote unquote, knows what a 10-year-old audience reads or what quantum mechanics is. And it's able to synthesize those two things and create this output as a result.
Under 15 seconds.
So now I want to show you the iterative nature of this. So what you could do is you could say something like this. Now explain it to a community college. Well, we don't even need community, a college student. And now it's going to do something similar. It's going to provide an explanation between the two. The nice thing about, and you can see this on your own, but the nice thing about some of the responses when you're asking for explanations is that it will provide highlights like bold text for vocabulary terms, things that you should know or that you could look into further, which is pretty nice. Sometimes there will be headings and it will break up the answer into different sections. Now tell me what the difference between the first and second explanation is. Use a bulleted list. So I wanted to tell me what the difference is between that first explanation for the 10-year-old and the second explanation for the college student. And so now it's doing that. And it provides a summary. The difference between explaining to a 10-year-old and a college student revolves around the depth of detail, complexity, and use of analogies. And now it's actually going in and breaking down what it did to differentiate between those two audiences. So does this make sense for folks when I say iterative and when I say conversational? How this is really, you're able to provide input in a single space and it knows what you're talking about in the context of the conversation. Yep.
It's giving us knowledge back.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, so I want to show you one more thing here. I want to show you the graphs and visualizations, because this can be really useful as well. So I don't know if this is actually in ChatGPT 3.5, but I was exploring it a little bit recently, and I think this might be interesting for you to see. Let's see. Create a pie chart on hypothetical global warming data. So you can use these tools to create data visualizations. Now, I'm asking it for hypothetical data because I don't have the data on hand. Let's say you, as a student, were doing research for one of your classes for a paper or project, and you had the data. You could actually add it to ChatGPT and it would use that data when it's creating the visualization. So in this case, it's asking me, what do I want to do? Here are a few common categories, and it says sources of greenhouse gas emissions, effects of global warming, global contributions by region. Let's do the third one. Okay, so again, you don't have to say number 3. You don't have to use a very particular syntax when you're responding to what it asks or what it says. Instead, you can use your own language, which I think is one of the benefits of these tools, is that you can just be who you are and not have to learn something outside of your normal self, the normal way you communicate. So now it is creating the pie chart for the greenhouse gas emissions by region, and it came up with these hypothetical percentages, and now it has created an image, and it's actually an image, so you could save it and put it into a PowerPoint or a paper. It also provides an explanation. Okay, for the sake of time, we're going to move over to Copilot now. And again, if you have questions, just unmute or enter it into the chat if you want. Copilot is Microsoft's product. This uses GPT technology as well. This uses GPT-4 technology. So this is the one that you would have to pay for in ChatGPT, but it's in Microsoft for free. The nice thing is that they keep making it more and more available. I used to have to sign in to use it. And as of this morning, trying it again, they're not making me sign in, which is nice. The address for this is copilot.microsoft.com. If you do sign in, it will save your chats like ChatGPT does. For the sake of time, I'm just going to stay signed out. Similar layout here, where you have your the center of your screen is where the conversation is going to be, and the bottom of the screen is where you can enter in your text. So was there another prompt, folks?
Yeah, the answer to life, everything, and the universe,
Okay.
which I believe is a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I was curious what it would come back with.
Okay, let's use that. What is the meaning to, was it the meaning or the answer? I can't remember what it said.
I think the answer.
Life, the universe. And let's check that out. It auto-completed it because this is a popular phrase. Okay, what is the answer to the life, the universe, and everything? Let's see if that's. Oh, yep. So the answer to life, universe, and everything, it recognizes it. Yeah. One of the things that Copilot is known for is its quirky personality. So you'll note that there are a lot of emojis in Copilot. You see the emojis here on the screen. So I consider this a quote unquote family friendly GenAI platform, and that it tries to have more of a personality. When you use ChatGPT, you can ask it to have a personality, but it's not going to add emojis by default or have a sense of humor by default. And so keep that in mind. But one of the things I want to also show you, do you see these citations here that are on the 1, 2, 3 here on the end of this answer? Because Copilot is connected to Bing, which is a search engine, Copilot is actually able to connect to the live internet when it generates its responses. That is something that ChatGPT, the free version especially, is not able to do. So keep that in mind if you're looking for information out there. You're looking for information that you might want to use in a paper or for a project. ChatGPT is not going to have those live citations, and we'll talk more about the problems of citations in a minute, which is why Copilot could be a better tool to use. One more one more iteration example. What about outside of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy context? Let's say I didn't even know that that was a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference, and I just want some moral help here. Now it's asking, it says the quest for understanding life, the universe, and everything continues, and perhaps the true answer lies in our collective curiosity, scientific exploration, and philosophical contemplation. So you could go on and on. You could say, what can I do to contribute to this quest or this search? You could ask, how do I reconcile the problems of today with life and the universe and everything? And it might continue to provide some guidance, again, synthesizing from philosophy books, religion books, all types of sources that are inside of the data set. Okay. Any questions so far from folks? Okay. So let's continue on in our presentation here. Got about 20 minutes. So how is GenAI helpful in higher ed? So we've seen these tools in action a little bit. Students are already using GenAI in a variety of ways, and these are things I've seen since these tools came out a couple of years ago. We see students using these tools to assist in creating new works, editing, asking for help, retrieving information. I've come across multiple students who use GenAI as a tutor. They just have one conversation open and they'll ask for explanation and assistance as they're doing their work. This is a broad explanation. We'll see a couple specific examples in a minute. The benefits that these tools have is that they tend to have a familiar or friendly voice. You can ask it to explain things in a way that makes sense for you. There's a lot of really interesting use cases that GenAI tools have for different learning styles, including disabilities. My partner has extreme ADHD, and she uses this every day because it allows her to parse out information and organize thoughts in a way that accommodates her needs. There's a level of precision in answers that really allows you to get to information that you need in a way that is more dynamic than a traditional information source like a textbook or an article or even a human. There's the iterative conversations, which can be really helpful. There's the technological access, meaning you can get this on your device. You can get this on your phone. There's an app for ChatGPT and Copilot on your phone right now. You have the ones that are offline as well. Everything is becoming more ubiquitous, and as a result, there's also ease of use. These are being developed for a general audience. So a lot of folks are able to use these tools without having to really learn new skills. You might go to a training session like this, but you can pretty much learn this on your own if you just spend time with it. Other considerations, however, is that a lot of these tools do require an online access. So if you don't have access or consistent access to the internet, that may be a barrier. And also the premium models and premium features usually cost money. So if there are certain things you want to do, you may have to pay to have access. Or some tools only allow a certain number of generations in a given time frame, especially the image generators. So if you want to create a ton of things and you're not paying to access, or you have no money to pay to access, you may encounter that barrier as well.
How much was it? You know?
I believe it's $20 a month for ChatGPT 4.0 or plus. There are obviously some bad things that are happening with ChatGPT and other tools. And as an educator here, I am obliged to share them with you because you should not do these things. And we're seeing them all the time in higher ed. When you enter assignments as prompts to have GenAI do the work for you. So that is something that you could do. If your professor asks you to write a 5-paragraph essay about some topic, you could have ChatGPT write that essay for you. That is what we consider unethical. It's violating the norms of the institution. Some folks would even go to say that it's plagiarism, and it does fall under academic dishonesty. So don't do that unless your professor says it's okay to do that. Using GenAI information is credible and authoritative. We will talk a little bit about this, but because GenAI is synthesizing information from a gazillion sources, the output that GenAI gives you should be considered a starting point like Wikipedia and not as the authoritative voice on its own. Using GenAI tools and providing output information without including a student statement. So some students will just decide they want to use one of these tools, maybe not to do the entire assignment or to do all of the work, but maybe they think a little bit is okay. Without sharing how you're using it, it can become problematic and a form of academic dishonesty. Professors may not like that you're using it even a little bit. Some professors really don't like these tools at all. So keep that in mind, that being very transparent about how you're using these tools will go a long way in terms of ethical use. Copying output from GenAI tools without adding any citations. Some professors are okay with using these tools to create information, like that pie chart, or like another graph, or a table, or even some of the general conversations. There are citation formats in MLA and APA and other formats for using GenAI tools, and it's highly recommended that you look into those if you plan on using any of the output in your work. So how can we use GenAI tools ethically at school? What do you all think? How might you actually find one of these tools helpful and ethical for the work that you're doing in your classes right now?
Well, for an example, like what you said, like when you're doing a research paper, like if you were a nursing student, you typed in what are some of the most recent articles on nursing or whatever, that would help you find the most, most updated articles for you to do your research on. So stuff like that, because you won't be plagiarized.
Right. So
I know that's a huge thing between the colleges and this AI. So schools actually introducing it, teaching you how to use it where you can't get in trouble. Because like me, I'm in computer class or coding.
Yeah.
And like, I know people in coding, they're like, dude, you have to use AI. And I'm like, dude, I'm learning how to do this. If I let them do if I ask them for help, I'm just going to be using AI the whole time. So I don't use it for that. Because like realistically, it will give you the answer. And you type it in and there you go. And it's like, well, what am I going to school for?
Right.
Because I need to know how to do it on my own. So, but then they're even when they go for jobs, they're asking what's your Gen AI, like how good are you at it? They want to know because it's extremely good tool to have, but it's sort of borderline there. Like,
right.
Where do we draw the line? Like, where are we learning and where are we just taking it off?
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that answer about the nursing, asking where to go or suggestions on next steps and process. That's a really good example. One thing that a lot of professionals that I've listened to through podcasts and whatnot, the way they describe it is it's a way to generate ideas, not necessarily get the authoritative information, but to get the gears in your mind going.
Yeah.
Responding to writer's block, looking at things through a new perspective, essentially having a conversation and bouncing ideas off that other receiving end.
Good idea to ask the question, just try to have a conversation with it instead of asking it straightforward.
Yeah.
To get more ideas, that's a good way to look at it.
Anyone online have any other ideas of how you might use it ethically in your class environment?
I mean, I'm also in software engineering, so I typically don't use it just because I mean, you could ask it a question, you're not going to learn if you're using it, and it's a lot more advanced. But if I have a question about something I'm unsure about, um, and I just wanted, or maybe I'm pretty positive, but I'd like a little backup, I can say, hey, am I doing this the right way? And I'll typically use it for that every once in a while.
That's a great example. I have actually done that. I did that last week. I wrote a letter. It was for a professional purpose, professional task. And I wrote it manually, old school, just on my own. And then I asked it, if it had any advice or what it thought. And it actually didn't give me any recommended room for improvement. It said, you did a great job. And it gave me the list of things I did that were correct or that I did well. So that feedback mechanism and positive reinforcement can go a long way as well, especially if you don't, like if it's late at night and maybe your peers are asleep or your professor isn't available to give you that reinforcement or that feedback. This could be one additional tool to do that.
That's what I didn't think about. Oh, resumes is a good one. I know some people that put their, I never even thought of it. And one of my cousins was like, oh, I put my resume in there, and they gave him a little, they said it was good, but then it gave him little points like to church it up a little bit,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Providing feedback on tools you've done.
You pull that up too.
Real quick, because we have 5 more minutes or 7 more minutes. Clock's wrong in here. So in the workforce, we're seeing a lot of the use of GenAI, obviously in software development and computer science, it's everywhere, but also in other spaces. So Microsoft products are getting more and more GenAI technology. Grammarly, which people use across different sectors and disciplines for writing, now is AI powered. Adobe has image AI tools embedded in the products themselves. They're not optional, they're just now normal. So keep that in mind. People are using GenAI technology for business documents, creating templates, helping with emails and meeting agendas, speeches and formal announcements. One of the things that GenAI can do really well is it can take your writing and it can update the tone. So if you don't think that your writing is professional enough, or maybe you're doing a speech at a wedding, for example, it's not sassy or fun enough, it can actually edit just the tone, not the content, but the tone, with grammar and vocabulary. Translations and localizations. So if you're working for an international organization or you have any interfacing with folks that are speaking or reading other languages, these tools do this really well. They also are trained on non-English language. So if let's say I was doing this earlier this month, I wanted to interact with ChatGPT only in Spanish to practice my Spanish. So I was able to just say, please only in this conversation use Spanish, and it can switch to Spanish, which was really neat. Simple code for computer programming. There are some issues with math and code that occasionally come up. Not always 100% right, but that seems to be one of the areas that OpenAI, the developer of ChatGPT, is really working on, because they want this tool, and a lot of others want their tools to be powerful companions for code. Visual outputs, if you work in any visual industry, the GenAI technology is growing. A lot of jobs are actually going away because of automation. My friend works in Hollywood and mentions that lighting and basic texture making in virtual environments, and like the green screen stuff, all of that is getting updated with GenAI.
They got paid good money too. Hollywood.
Exactly. So what have you experienced? Have any of you experienced, maybe from your professors, talking about it, or maybe you already work in your field. Have you experienced Gen AI showing up at your jobs or in your workplace, or maybe in the job postings that you're looking at? And if not, that's fine too. Maybe you're not, maybe you haven't been looking for it. You mentioned that you saw it in some of the job listings, right?
Oh,
That
yeah.
they're asking
Yeah,
about
they-
Gen
they
AI
ask
skills.
you, now in software development, they'll ask you, what's your compatibility with it? Because my cousin was looking at some of the listings and stuff, and like it's like you put that on your resume and stuff too nowadays, because like it is huge, and like if you know how to work it for your skill, you know, like you just said, pretty much through this whole morning, it's like have a conversation with it.
Yep.
Then they're gonna, you know, they want to know. Because it is a good skill to know.
For sure. And yeah, keep that in mind. You can always add it, similar to adding Office Suite or Adobe Suite to your resume. You can add Chat GPT or Copilot or something else, one of the other apps, if you do have some experience using them. Okay, we're going to go through this really quick, but these are really important things to consider. And if you are interested in these, probably in the fall, I'm going to run the ethics Gen AI session again. I did it last quarter, and there's a recording of last quarter's online on our website as well. But these are some of the biggest issues and problems with these tools. Hallucinations. So these tools will often provide false or fictional sources and say that they are real. If that sounds fascinating to you, or you're asking why would they do that, Google Gen AI hallucinations. Lack of citable sources. So because, as I said, these tools are synthesizing a lot of different source information, they sometimes cannot provide citations for specific information, which becomes problematic if you want to use that information in your research. Rules, standards, and oversight. Sometimes you'll use the tool and it'll say, I can't help you with that. I'm not going to tell you how to build a bomb. I'm not going to tell you how to burn down a police precinct. These types of things that come up in popular culture or have happened in the news, like there may be ethical issues or ethical standards that the companies that have developed these tools have in place that you have no control over as an end user. So keep that in mind. Some content may be off limits. Barriers to access. I already mentioned the fact that many of these do require an interactive internet connection or a paid subscription to access. Bias in data sets. So as we are all biased, all of our human knowledge is biased. There's different types of bias, but that means that if you are using these tools, you may actually encounter bias in them. There are reports and demonstrated use cases of significant bias in some of the output of these tools, including racial, gender, sexual orientation, religion, politics, lots of different types of bias that we see in other aspects of our lives showing up in these tools. These tools are not perfect. They're not neutral. There's also issues around violations of intellectual property and the fact that a lot of these tools have been trained on sources that were taken and not used with permission. That's especially a problem in the visual world. And privacy considerations. When you use these tools, you're not necessarily certain what the developers are going to do with your conversations and your data. So keep that in mind. So to close, some student recommendations for all of you before we leave today. When you're using these tools or thinking about using them in your class, look at your syllabus or assignments and the language to see if you are allowed to use the tools. Not every syllabus or assignment will say, but it's a good practice to look. Communicate with your professor early on about Gen AI. If it's something you want to start using, talk with them, see if they're cool with it, see if they have any opinions on how it should or should not be used. Be aware that there are different opinions here at SCC and everywhere. Some professors are going to love these tools and they promote them. Some actively oppose them. Stay up to date on news and trends. Come talk to me if you want to hear about what's going on. Acknowledge over reliance. It's easy to get addicted to any tool, but these tools can become quite habitual. And what does that mean in terms of learning and your process for learning and going through some of the work versus just automating it with these tools? And finally, again, I mentioned this earlier with the unethical use. If you want to ethically use these tools, when your professors allow you to, always include some kind of statement of use and citations when possible when using these tools. That is the end of this presentation. We are just a little bit over time today, but I want to thank you for being here. The recording will be uploaded to the website. We have another one of these sessions tomorrow morning. That recording will be uploaded as well. If you joined this session or any of the other sessions, you will get a follow-up survey asking for additional ideas, different types of trainings you want to see, and so on. And finally, I do want to highlight that there will be 3 more types of sessions this quarter: ethical uses for productivity, where we're actually going to put these tools to use, exploring, managing, and completing creative projects, and plugins and GPTs. So how these tools are turning into a marketplace. Any last questions before we end for today?
I did want to ask you a question if you have the time. So I have a friend who actually does compose music for a couple like different gaming companies, like does commercials, things like that. And one thing he's talked about is a lot of people in his industry are nervous about AI in general, because I've seen him use the music AI, where it can just, you can ask it for a type or a genre and it'll give you a song.
Yeah.
And going into software engineering, I'd like to make it a career. It does feel like I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball on this, because right now it feels like a lot of that might be switching over to using a lot more AI tools to write code. Like AT&T, I think, already has a commercial that I saw during the Masters about using it as a tool to help you develop code, but it helps you write all your code faster. Like, are these jobs still going to kind of be around when I'm through with this course, or is the industry going to trend in that direction where they aren't going to hire as many software developers because they have AI that'll write the code for them?
I think that a lot of jobs are going to change. I don't have a general answer. That's a question that there
It's
are
a pretty
many
broad question.
There are entire webinars and conferences that talk about that in different industries. There is a lot of nervousness and anxiety, so I want to let you know that I hear what you're saying with your concerns. My recommendation would be to actually actively look at different companies and what their statements have been, because a lot of them have made statements. Some of the between the lines reading you'll have to do is look at the types of jobs they're posting, look at what they're asking for in terms of those jobs when it comes to things like GenAI and that skill set. Also look at different places that provide additional training, like LinkedIn Learning is a really good one. And see if you have time between the quarters. Consider doing one of the LinkedIn Learning 10-hour long trainings or something that gets you up to speed on a particular area. At the end of the day, especially with software and technology, having that knowledge is not going to hurt you. So if you have the time to invest a little bit, that's going to be helpful. And like in any workforce, being enthusiastic about change is going to be beneficial to you. If you are open to it, if you are into it, even if you're not an expert to it, if you know that it's happening and you want to be part of that move, that shift culturally and with the skills, that's going to also be a benefit to you.
Right.
Talk with your professors, see if they can connect you with any folks in industry to get that perspective. I don't have that perspective. I have the perspective that I just shared with you, but being able to find someone on the inside and maybe even develop a mentorship relationship with them would be another really good option, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I think learning as much as possible about it is probably not the worst idea, I think. I did ask one of my professors about it, and he said, people that learn to use it as a tool will probably have a leg up in the industry. And people that don't might be left behind a little bit, because this is pretty incredible technology, and it feels like it's going to be integrated into pretty much everything over the next decade.
Yeah. And jobs will go away, but jobs will arrive. That's how it always has worked. You can use the GenAI as an analogy for literally any other technology that's ever been invented or has ever caused some cultural shift or a sea change. And know that there will be grief around some of those jobs going away. And some people will not, for all the reasons, they will not figure out a way to shift or pivot into what is next. And there will be a lot of people that do. That's how it always has been, and that's how it always will be. So keep that in mind as well. We're in an institution of higher education, so you're all here today. I know that is a good first step, but I do want to say, I want to acknowledge all of our time constraints here, and thank you all. And if you have any other questions, or you want to have a conversation about this in greater depth, stop by the library and talk with me. All right, any last minute thoughts, or are we good to go for today?
I don't suppose you schedule like Zoom meetings. I actually live on the west side as well. I'm in Mount Lake Terrace, so won't be able to make it over to the library, but it would be nice to have maybe a longer conversation about it.
Yeah, just send me an email.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, have a nice day, and we will see you soon, maybe at one of the future sessions. Take care.
Thank you.